Welcome to the Zeducation Podcast. Welcome to the Zeducation Podcast, where you come to level up as a leader so that you can win your career and life. I believe that when leaders level up, everybody wins. Today, we're talking about something most leaders underestimate until it's too late: leadership energy. Because the truth is, you can have all the strategy, all the goals in the world, but if your battery is empty, your decision making drops, your patience runs thin, and your team starts to feel it. In this episode, I'm joined by Bhosale, founder and CEO of The Bridge. Kenny brings a unique approach that blends evidence-based leadership development with health and lifestyle coaching, helping busy leaders perform at a high level without sacrificing their health. We're breaking down 5 habits or things that you can do to protect your leadership energy so you can lead with more calm, clarity, and consistency at work and still have something left for the people who matter the most at home. So let's get into it. Thank you for joining us, Kenny. How are you doing, my friend?
Good to be here finally. So I've been watching you guys' podcast for a bit and glad to be here.
Yeah. Well, I've been following you for a bit on social media too, and so I'm very honored to finally have you as a guest on this Zeducation Podcast. But as tradition, we always ask our guests before we get into the nice meaty gritty of our conversation and topic today, introduce yourself and maybe, what is your career journey and how did you end up where you are today with The Bridge?
Yeah, so definitely if you'd asked me 10 years ago, this is what I'll be doing, I would have said, no way, mate, just give me a team, send me on a mission, I'll be good. So just as a quick canter, I came to New Zealand when I was 14, immigrant parents, I was one of 2 boys. I come from a military background, so my dad was Navy, granddad was Air Force, 21 years, so I was always destined for the military. I was groomed for the military, as I say now. So when I came to New Zealand, the natural path for me was to join the Navy. I wanted to follow my dad. So at age, I was 16 and a half actually when I joined, so I was a boy, really. So I joined the Navy. I had to wait a few months until I started training. Early career, I was an electrician because the electricians got paid well. I mean, they still do, to be honest. I should have stayed an electrician. But I kind of got bored a bit, so I started as an electrician, then decided to specialize as a naval architect. So a naval architect, essentially, for the audience, is someone who designs, builds, and maintains big ships, so like cargo ships, cruise ship, container ships type stuff. So I was very much a specialist engineer. I was a chartered engineer, project manager. I was paid well. I'll say that. I was paid well in the context of the military. And I did that for a good 8 years. And then I was sort of in my mid-20s. I had a quarter-life crisis. And I went on a leadership course and I walked away 2 weeks later realizing that I don't really like engineering. And I just spent, I don't know how many thousands of dollars and hours and degrees on it. But I just enjoyed leading people. So I kind of made a pretty bold shift at the time and I took a pay cut and walked away from a promising career, still within the military, and went into general management quite early. And I can say this in hindsight, I wasn't that sure at the time. It was more of a risk. But my career really took off as a generalist leader. And I loved everything about leaders, leadership, people. So rather than studying engineering, I started to read up about psychology, behavioral science, team dynamics, culture, organizations. And more I read, the more I did, more, sort of performance punishment. You do a good job, you get a harder job. So my career benefited from it. I got promoted relatively quickly. So that was my early career. And I was always a doer, a leader, give me a mission, send me overseas, and she's good. And it was only until sort of 15 years into my career that I needed a break. I was getting deployed almost every year, which is pretty hard on family. And I was looking for an exit, and at that time I was shoulder tapped to be the head of the leadership training school for the Navy. And that's how I ended up in this space. Wow. At first I was like, thank you, it's not me. But I actually took the role because I wanted stability. And I just fell in love with it. And it's going to sound cliche, but I found my calling. And that's where The Bridge was born, really. And I was kind of very deliberately appointed because they wanted an operational person in a training role, someone who had kind of been on the front line and done operations. And that's the mentality of carried through into The Bridge. That's what we do. We're results focused. And which is, luckily it's landing and we're doing well.
That's amazing. And at what point did you come to realize, because energy and lifestyle is a big part of your approach and leadership development, right, for people? At what point did you realize energy is a huge, or how you manage energy is a huge component of leadership?
Yeah, it's a good question. And I felt like I inherently knew it after 18 years in the military. It was part of the culture where we knew that for us to make good decisions, to lead on operations, we had to look after ourselves. So mentally, physically, emotionally, sometimes spiritually, got to be at your peak performance. And we're not talking a weekend or a week, we're talking 6, 7 months at a time, sometimes working 7 days a week. So inherently, I just kind of knew that was it because I saw others do it really well. I did it as part of that, and that was the culture. I'm not saying that everyone in the military does it. There's always outliers, but as a whole, the military did that really well. So I only realized that when I went into business and started working with corporate, and it's just the complete opposite. Like burnout was a badge, and they would just be making decisions while most of them were just stuck in survival mode. So that was 3 years ago, and we made a deliberate decision that if we want human performance, for leaders to be high performers, we need to look at this other side. We can't just talk about leadership without the human side of it. So we actually was more, I knew it, and then I realized this is a thing that's needed. And so then we created a strategy and brought this in.
Yeah, I love that because people, well, a lot of leaders can get lost in chasing the result, right? Got to get the number, got to meet the KPI, got to keep the shareholders happy, right? So they're just chasing that and then just neglecting their health and all of that. But I like what you said. It doesn't matter how many goals you have. You have all these big goals, but if you don't have the energy to execute them, it doesn't matter how many goals you have.
No.
If you don't have the energy to execute them, right?
100%. And you, as you said at the start during the intro, right? You can have the most amazing career and you can be like the youngest and the most successful CEO. But if you end up being divorced and your kids don't know you and you've got health problems at 35, I mean, what's it all worth? It's sort of pointless, right? Because we forget that it's a marathon. And at the end of the day, you want to have a career. You don't want to have a job. So yeah, we see that. That's actually real stories, plenty of them. So many people who kind of come to a point in their career and they go, man, I should have really prioritized myself along the way.
Yeah. And if you could like really tell our audience, like, why is managing your energy as a leader or energy management, time management, people think of that like easy, right? Time management, all this management, people management, system management, but what about energy management? It's the last thing people think about, all right? Like, what's your advice? Like, why is it so important for leaders to manage energy efficiently?
Yeah, it is. We don't think about it. And if I was to just put it, I'm going to be really simple here. 2 words: lead self. Because if you're not leading yourself, then there's no way you can lead your team or your business or your organization. So the bottom line is lead self. And I'll share a story with you because like most of my leadership I've learned through stories and experiences and having really good mentors around me, good men, good women. And one of my best jobs I did, I was working for a guy called Tim Keating. He was the general. He was the CEO of the Defence Force, if you want to call it that. And I was his staff officer. So basically I used to carry his bag around, right? I was in my sort of late 20s, and most guys or girls would be like, man, I'm too senior to carry someone's bag. But for me, that job was the best because I was like, man, stuff my ego. I get to sit on his shoulder for a year and a half. Every meeting, every strategic engagement overseas, and I got to see leadership at its finest. And Tim was ex-Special Forces, so it's had a pretty successful career himself, one of the best leaders I worked for. But where I was going with the story is Tim knew that I was there because I wanted to learn. And so he would just like impart wisdom all the time. And one day I remember we were in the lounge in the Quarter Lounge in Sydney on our way back to New Zealand after an overseas trip. And he just asked me a question. He said, hey, Kenny, why do our generals fail? So generals are the most senior leaders, right? You're executives, essentially. And, in my sort of early days of my career, I just kind of went through and listed what I thought he wanted to hear, which is, not strategic enough, can't lead change, et cetera, which is kind of like cliches, right? And he said, yeah, I mean, those are things, but we probably wouldn't appoint them if they couldn't do that, right? So why did they fail? And his answer was because when the pressure goes on, they stop leading themselves. So they're not bringing the best version of themselves to work. And when you're talking pressure, we're not just talking operational pressure, right? Because as a military person, you're trained for operations. You do that all your life. That's kind of like the rugby field, right? You're trained for the rugby field. But you know that a rugby player, for example, I use a sports analogy here, is their lives don't get derailed on the pitch. It's often off the pitch, like all that kind of lifestyle. And that stuck with me. And he used to say executive athletes. We are executive athletes. And we got to look after our body and our mind like we're executive athletes, high performance. And that stuck with me all the time. And that's lead self. Like, how do you bring the best version of you to work and home and do that consistently week in, week out, day in, day out, all the time? And if you can manage that, then you've kind of got that executive lifestyle, or you're an executive athlete. So that in a nutshell is leaders at all levels. If you can't lead yourself, then, good luck.
Yeah, I love that. It's some great advice, eh? If you can't lead yourself, how can you lead others? And that's just like, looking after yourself, your well-being, always leveling up as well, not just staying stagnant, right? Otherwise, you become the ceiling for your team as well. And I really like that advice around leading yourself, because you can't help others if you're not at a higher plane to lift them, right?
Yeah.
Right. You've got to be there first, kind of thing, right? I want to come back to like energy, especially for leaders. What do you feel like are some of the blind spots that leaders don't realize that they're doing, but it's actually draining their energy? It's not bringing any ROI. It's not good for them. It's not producing results, but they still keep doing it anyway.
Yeah, so, I mean, there's a whole lot of stuff that goes into this. So it's not like an easy one, because our energy, which, if you can sort of say the battery, charge of the battery, there's so many things that affect it, including what's happening at home, relationships, sleep, nutrition, kind of the wharetapawha, the whole kind of pillars of our well-being. But there's also other factors like age. When you're in your 20s, you can pull an all-nighter and still kind of go out partying the next day, right? But when you're 40, 45, 50, those days really start to take a toll on you, and you're no longer bouncing back. So this age comes into it, the type of role. So it's quite variable. So one thing that we often start with leaders is self-awareness. If you're not self-aware enough, and some of this we can go through, like what are the telltale signs of being self-aware that you're about to burn out or you're on that journey. If you can just start with self-awareness, then I reckon that follows. The rest follows. Probably another good insight here on this one is, people generally are quite draining. People leadership is hard. People are not easy. They're irrational, emotional, not logical. But another one that we've seen recently come up more and more is this whole ambiguity and uncertainty. And I'm not just talking like pre-COVID, COVID. I'm talking in general. Like the world is getting more and more uncertain, right? And not just at work, but at home as well. Like we don't know what the economy is going to do, the election is going to do. So leaders are carrying a lot more just all the time. And it's not like, work problems that you solve it and you move to the next one. There are some heavy things that leaders are just carrying all the time. And so as leaders, as people, as mothers, fathers, responsible adults in the society, we need strategies to be able to just carry those bricks on our back and still be okay with it, and not sort of lose the plot along the way. So I think that's probably something we've seen over time as well. Like leaders are just carrying a lot more, and that's impacting work, it's impacting life. So a lot of our strategies are just like, let's stabilize, and then we can talk about high performance.
Nice. Is there any tips around the self-awareness? Like how, because I agree, like if you can't catch it yourself, what are the chances of someone else seeing what you're doing wrong, right? And say, hey, you slow down a bit. Like it's better that you develop that self-awareness so that you can catch it and address it. But how do you build self-awareness around that?
Yeah. So one of the best tips here is, so I'm going to talk about burnout slightly, because that's a word that's become more and more popular these days, burnout. And some people claim they're burnt out, but they're not. They're just claiming it. And we generally see that. It's like, no, you're not burnt out. There's a bit of fatigue, sure. You just need a rest, but you're not burnt out. So don't overuse it. But then there's other people who would like adamantly say they're not burnt out. They're sweet. They've got this, and they're actually burnt out. You can see it. So I think that I'm going to go down that track perhaps because that's a good way to. And if you can look at literature, we don't need to go into the academics of it, but we know that there are stages to burnout. You don't just kind of work, and then they're burnt out. So there's stages to burn out. A lot of what we do at the Bridge, we try and simplify everything as much as we can. It's like study hard, learn it, and then simplify it, and simplify it a bit more. So one of my simple ways that I personally use this as well is recovery time. So how do you start to see or become aware that your energy is starting to run low? And the most basic level of recovery is, am I recovered after a good night's sleep? So if you're having a good night's sleep, and I don't mean like a disturbed sleep, obviously that's normal if dog's jumping on your bed and it wakes you up at night, sure. But if you have a good night's sleep and you wake up the next morning and you're still tired, that's probably a good time to just go, what's going on? It's not just a one-off thing, or maybe it happens 2 days in a row, or maybe it happens several times a week. But that's a really easy one to know, right? Because you get up in the morning and you know when you're rested or not. So that's like the most fundamental. If that you can arrest it at that level and start to put some habits in place, then that's going to help. Now, that might not always be the case, though. Sometimes you just have a hectic week at work, like ebbs and flows, or family, school holidays right now, it's stressful. So the next one is when you go, okay, I can see that it's up and down, but can I have a good weekend? Unplug. Can I have a good weekend and feel recovered on Monday morning? So that's kind of the next level, right? So if you're having a good weekend away, resting, eating well, doing a bit of exercise, time with family, all of the stuff that you need to do yourself, and still turning up the Monday morning and you're not recovered, then that means, okay, now we need to have a serious conversation about this, because you do that 1, 2, 3 weekends and you're still not there. I can guarantee it's adding up in the background. You just don't know it, but it's starting to accumulate, because stress, fatigue, energy, it's not a day-to-day thing. There's a cumulative effect to it, which means that we don't burn out overnight, we burn out over time. So we often talk about, okay, the weekend is not enough. And then the next stage, which is probably kind of more the extreme, is when towards the extreme is when you're taking a holiday, 2-week holiday, generally about, we said 2 weeks, right? A few days to actually stop thinking, a few days to recover, a few days to enjoy. So if you take a 2-week holiday, you come back, and then within a few days or a week, you're back to square one in terms of your stress levels, your energy levels, then that's a good sign that, okay, I'm getting up there now with my self-management. I need to do something different. And you'll be amazed at how many people, right now everyone's going on a holiday, right? Christmas. Just watch this space with the people the clients and the leaders. Ask them in January how they're feeling, and ask the same person in February how they're feeling. And I can guarantee you more than half will be, man, I'm just like back to square one. That's the reality right now. So then that's the next level, right? Telltale signs. If you're not recovering, and if you can't arrest it there, then an intervention is probably needed, because the next level is the burnout, really. And when you're talking burnout, what I mean is that you need to quit your executive or corporate job or a leadership job, and you need to take a year off work. And sometimes it's forced on you due to health issues. Sometimes it's forced on to you due to other issues, and sometimes it's self-imposed. But at that level, it's serious. There are health issues. You probably put on weight. You're probably impacting your relationships. There's probably blood pressure issues happening. So it's manifesting physically now, the stress, and that's like doctor intervention now. That's no longer leadership. So we often say, well, just watch your recovery. The battery doesn't charge overnight every time, and if you're starting to know that, and if your battery is not full the next morning, it's probably a good time to talk about it before you get to that end state. So that's often what we talk about, is like, how do you become self-aware? What's your recovery time? And you'll start to pick it up quickly, and then we can have a conversation about it. So
that's some powerful advice, and Kenny just gave you that one for free. Well, I learned so much just from hearing it. I like that you brought up, or you started with, like, monitoring your sleep. When you wake up in the morning, how do you feel? Do you feel recovered, or do you still feel stressed and anxious and tired? Monitor, because the thing about sleeping is you should be recharging. It's like I'd be worried if I plug my phone in the wall, like charging, wake up in the next morning, the phone's not charged. Yeah, I've plugged it in, I've turned on the switch, something's wrong, right? And if we're that obsessed with our phones, we should be prioritizing our health just even more than that. So I love that, monitoring your sleep, like your recovery or your recharge time. Those will give you the signs, the clues are in there. Now, this is I think a good point then to kind of shift into some advice and some practical tips around, how you can manage your energy so that you're still performing, you still have clarity, and you still have happiness. So what are some 5 practical tips that you can share with our audience around energy management?
Yeah, so I'll share some tips. And when I said tips, I'm going to go real practical habits, right? Something that you can do tomorrow and you should see results immediately, not in like 1 year's time. That's not practical. That's just like a strategy, I hope. But before I do that, I'm going to just share some mindsets that we talk about. So we do, when we work with leaders, their leaders or the companies will come to us and say, well, we need this person or this group of leaders need time management training. And I was like, we're talking about people in their mid-30s. I think they can manage their time, right? They didn't get to this point in their life if they couldn't manage their time. What we often talk about and what we do is change the relationship with time. So they got to shift their mindset on how. And, since, I don't know when, maybe 1970s, since kind of the calendar was invented for work, not just for kind of life, we kind of have always got stuck in this time relationship with work. So what that means is, there's this sort of come to work at 9 o'clock, finish at 5 o'clock, there's 8 hours in the day. Every productivity tool, most productivity tools you can think of will organize your time from your calendar and your Outlook all the way through to project management tools, Asana and all this AI hacks. Everything is managing time. And I think that's broken. We shouldn't be managing time. Not as certainly. Obviously, some professions, like lawyers, will disagree with me right now immediately because they bill 6 minutes. So okay, there are some outliers, but generally, if you're gonna want human performance at its best, the first principle is we need to change our relationship with time and have a relationship with energy. And we know that if you have 8 hours in the day and if you book 8 tasks during that day, you're not going to produce the same amount of outcome because your energy will vary during the day. And we know what that means. So the first one is we need to change the way we think about energy. The way we think about our week. And we need to look at it from an energy lens, not a time lens. The second principle we talk about is we need to be able to utilize stress. So we've kind of, and I'm not going to single out millennials or Gen Z because I think adults, everyone does this. We seem to sort of be shy of stress a little bit. Stress is not a bad thing, right? Too much stress is a bad thing, but too little stress is a bad thing. But there's an optimum level of stress, right? And we know this because sometimes if there's no stress at all, we just probably struggle to get out of bed in the morning. So stress is a good thing. And we learned this in the military, that when you can capture that, if you know it's going to be stressful, you can actually utilize that stress to advantage. And of course, even a moderate amount of stress over time will lead to fatigue. That's true. But we need to also change our relationship with stress. Stress is good. We need to utilize it. When we feel stressed, we know this neurologically and physically, that heightens us. It makes us more alert. It makes our brain kind of work harder. It's kind of that battery that we talked about, but the battery's on full drive now, which means it's going to be sweet. You're going to be productive, but you can't do it all the time. Otherwise, it'll deplete really quickly. You kind of just dialed it up. So second relationship we need to change is with stress. And then the third one, which is more a leadership mindset rather than energy, is that, and I say this all the time, and leaders kind of go, what does that actually mean? And I say that leaders are not paid, you as a leader, you're not paid for your time, you're paid for your leadership. So you're not paid for your time, you're paid for your leadership. What I mean by that is you can be in the office working your butt off for like 10 hours a day and you could just be the most ineffective leader. Or you could be in the office for 2 hours and just be the most effective leader, because in that time, you're fully present, you're the best version of you, you're talking to your team, you're engaging them, you're listening, you've got the energy, Or if you're doing strategic stuff, then you're planning, analyzing, risk opportunities. You're doing all of that cool stuff. You're in kind of not stuck in survival mindset. So give me 2 hours of really good leadership energy. And I don't care if you go home after that, right? Whereas leaders, we're still kind of stuck in this, I need to be there first in, last out, all of that sort of stuff. So we're trying to manage or lead through time, whereas you need to lead through. So we're paid for our leadership. So those 3 mindsets are quite key in shifting just the relationship we have as leaders. And I say this to CEOs and executives quite a lot, because one of the things I try and get them to do is take time out from the busyness to kind of just get their head above the water and look at the horizon a little bit. And they go, no, I'm too busy. And I was like, well, if you're too busy, then who's being strategic? Because your team is not. They're probably more busy than you. You're not leading by example. So those 3 mindsets are probably worth just thinking about. And as I even speak or say this out loud, I'm sure like for the audience and yourself, there'll be some stuff you go, oh yeah, I kind of do that or don't do that. But let me go to the question though, is the habits. And there's probably like a list of 20 things, right? But I'm just going to go the 5 that come to mind more immediately. And the first one is sleep. So we talked about sleep. So you need to if you talk about habits, you need to make time for 5 things. Make time for sleep. So we talked about sleep. The second one is make time for sorting. And what I mean by sorting is if you think about, this is the analogy I love. If you think about your sock drawer at home, we all have a sock drawer, right? And sometimes it's really organized. All the socks are like, you made your tubes and they're in pairs. And sometimes it's just like a shit fight. And you go in the morning and you're trying to like get your socks out, and it's just really stressful, and you end up with mismatched socks. So that's what I mean. It just adds stress. So when I said time to sort, it's just to make sense of what's happening and get your life and get a bit of sense of control back in. Because when we are not in control, our brain is starting to consume a lot of energy because we don't like uncertainty and being out of control. So our brain is becoming hyper alert because we don't know what's coming next. So obviously, I'm not saying use that time to sort your sock drawer, but do that at work, the equivalent of work, whether that's you going through kind of your key task, organizing a calendar, like get yourself under control again. If you land at your desk in the morning and you're straight into emails or conversation, you're probably already behind. So the second habit, and you can create this, even if it's 10 minutes, cool, like do that, right? So yeah, first one, sleep. Second one, make time for sorting. The next one is make time for re-energizing. I think this one is simple. We talked about the fire type of fire, like find your things that give you energy, and it doesn't have to be the same. Everyone's quite different. If you're single, you probably don't care too much about many things, and you just might want to just hit the gym, right? That's cool. If you're married, children, you probably are more at the stage of life where most of your energy comes from spending time with the kids or a partner. Everyone knows what their thing is, and for some people it might be something different, right? Just time yourself. We often say that you don't have to do everything, just be really brutal, be like an investor of time. Your time is valuable. If you're going to do 1 hour of highly re-energizing activity, it's like your phone, right? You can chuck in the fast charger on the wall, or you can chuck it in your computer. It's going to take like 6 hours to charge. So you know what works for you, like do it. So make time for recharging. The next one is make time for reflecting. So the reflecting one is, I think it's probably got a bit more of a leadership lens to it, which is basically saying that, the old saying that we don't learn from experience, we learn from reflecting on experience. So we need to be able to reflect for many reasons. Firstly, we need to know. And when I say reflecting, by the way, I don't mean reflecting on this job or this task or this problem that you're solving on your business. What I mean here explicitly is reflecting on yourself, kind of pulling out the metaphorical mirror, looking, going, how am I turning up right now? How am I turning up to my kids? How am I turning up to my team? How am I turning up as a leader? How am I turning on as a father, as a mother, whatever it is, as a son? Like just really take time to reflect. You'd be amazed at how many leaders just don't take time to reflect on themselves. And then suddenly they kind of go, I didn't know I was doing that. It's like, maybe you did. You just didn't take the time to think about it. So just kind of take that time to reflect. And the last one, I'm just going to make sure I got that order right, is, my favorite is make time for pain. So that's the biggest one. And I like the word pain. Because life is not all roses and butterflies, right? We got to do the hard shit. We got to be able to do the tough stuff. And generally, I don't know where we got this. Maybe, what do they say? Like, we're living in the comfort of the 21st century now. Like, we didn't have to do what our forebears had to do with the wars and the crashes of the stock market and all that stuff. So because and this is maybe my worldview of society right now, so I'll be careful I don't get cancelled on it, but basically what it's saying is that there's some painful stuff you have to do. The stuff we don't like, the hard stuff, maybe as a leader, it's that difficult conversation you need to have with someone, fire someone, maybe it's a decision that there's no right or wrong answer, we got to make that decision. So if you kind of combine that with that principle of, if you look at your week through the lens of energy, you want to find out what's the most painful things you have to do and then put them in the most high energy times that you have. And if you can do that, because what happens otherwise, it's like, like cleaning a room. You hate cleaning a room, so you keep it to the end of the day. The longer you keep it, the more you think about it, the more it plays on your mind, and more like, I need to do my room, and you're not present in and we see that often at people, we just procrastinate and keep it. I say, no, eat the frog, do your stuff first, right? So make time for pain. And it's like, if it's going to be painful, it's going to be painful, whether you do it now or you do it at night or tomorrow or next week. So just make time for the pain and do it. So that's some tips that you can do. And when I say these tips or these habits, you should be able to see them in your day-to-day diary that you've planned now through the energy lens. And you should be able to track whether this habit is serving me or not. Because if it's not, then don't do it, right? Everyone's different. But I like habits that you can get immediate value out of, because then that means you're probably going to repeat it. That's human brain, right? If it gets value, you're going to do it again, and then it will become from a behavior to a habit. So,
wow, that was just like listening to or reading a book there. some great tips there, really insightful, really detailed, and detailed enough for our audience to go away and, like you said earlier, apply. Like starting today. So look in the mirror, look through those 5 things that Kenny mentioned, which ones you need to improve on, and work on it. I love that. This also reminds me around what you said around managing your energy and intentionally prioritizing those painful or those big tasks during the time of day where your energy is high. And I hear this a lot, and this could be part of it. Is this the reason why a lot of people have their meetings in the morning? Because ideally the energy levels should be a little bit more higher for those critical thinking, big decisions, a lot of conversations type of thing.
Yeah, definitely. I think there's logic to that. If you're going to have a really difficult meeting, if you do it on Friday afternoon, it's not going to work out for you. The only lens I'll add to that is we're all different. So sometimes a 9 o'clock meeting might be the best for one person. Or what I've actually found. In fact, you'd ask me this question in the military. I said, right, 8:30 in the morning, that's when everyone's fresh. But everyone is fresh at that time for a good reason, because we have had years of training and discipline and routine that we know that 8:30 is the peak time. But if you're in corporate, 8:30 is the most stressful time, because most parents have to do kid drop-offs, right? So I say, rather than trying to figure it out or being clever about it, now, I have this sort of philosophy in leadership, right? We're going to slight tangent, but I think it's probably worth it. If you as a leader, if you're trying to outsmart your team and be more intelligent, then you've kind of already lost it, right? Don't be a mind reader. And sometimes I see leaders do that. I said, just to remind me, like, how's the mind reading going? Because you can't read minds, right? So maybe this is a good example as a leader. It's like, well, don't overthink it. Ask your team. Just ask them, hey, when is your peak time? Obviously, you're not going to please everyone, but at least you can please the majority. So just ask them, hey, here's a calendar. When is your peak time? Because I want to make sure that I know what that is, so I can organize the meeting during that time. So, but in concept, you're spot on. That's why morning meetings work. That's why sometimes pre-lunch meeting works. After lunch, a bit of snoozing, not actual snoozing, but the energy. So yeah, just pick your times. Most people would peak sort of that mid-morning, 10 o'clock to 12 o'clock, just from experience in corporate. But yeah, just ask your team.
Yeah. Is that a good question for husbands to ask their wives? When's the peak time? No, that's kidding. I don't want to get in trouble with that. No,
I did not give that advice.
No, just kidding. I just had a funny thought there. But I love your point there around as a leader, it's important for you to also be aware around the energy levels within your team and when is their peak as well, not just yourself.
Yeah.
And then optimizing performance and results and, during those peak energy levels. I want to come back to like leaders who have a lot to deal with. Like you said, they got a lot on their plate. They're carrying a lot. They're doing a lot, right? And leadership's just different than what it used to be, especially the challenges today. How do leaders, even with all these problems and people that are wanting their attention and their time, how do they protect their energy?
So maybe a couple of, there's probably one tip and then probably one thing to sort of think about. And both of them are actually a good piece of advice you can action. One is that our energy, and let's talk about the mental, emotional energy, is often drained by a whole bunch of things that we don't even think about. A good example of this is, like for me, I'm very selective about when I let news and media in. Social media particularly, because it's all designed to trigger you, right? It's very well designed to trigger you to create the clickbait. And I use that example because that everyone can relate to that, right? You open that you're scrolling on your phone and next minute you're outraging for some reason, right? Because something's triggered you. So what I'm saying there is, as leaders, we need to control our emotional exposure. Like, what are we exposed to? Because we can't 100% control our mindset. Like, I know the old school thinking is that the only thing you can control is your mindset. I was like, really? Can you? Can you really do that? Because I tell you what, you might be the most optimistic person in the world. And if I put you in a room with 10 other pessimist, cynical people, I can guarantee you, in an hour, in 1 hour, 2 hours, half day, you will be that, right? Because we take a lot of our energy from others and we give energy as well. So I say really think about how you're exposing yourself to emotions and to other energy. If there's a person at work, I was talking to a leader the other day, we were doing a coaching session, and she was saying one of her leaders is just like negative Nancy, right? Like he comes in, everything's wrong, organization's not doing a good job, catastrophizing, cynical, pessimistic. And after about 10 minutes, she was like, oh, I had it, she's had it. And I asked her the question, I said, why are you letting him take your energy, right? So I think a lot of that is your energy is your energy, right? And that's your ammunition, and you only got limited ammunition to expend. So then maybe that's the military coming out. It's just, that's your energy and that's all you got to give. So don't let anyone steal that. Sometimes you can't, it's your boss, you can't avoid your boss if they're the ones taking your energy, kind of the vampires, the energy suckers. But then you need to create some boundaries. So one thing is that you got to control and boundary your energy. It's your vessel, it's your ammunition, what are you going to call it, but you control the energy. And that sometimes is strategy, sometimes is a mindset, but we work through that with leaders. And sometimes it is just going, I'm going to actually physically avoid this, like the phone, for example, or this conversation. I'm not going to engage with someone who I know is a vampire. They're going to take all my energy. I'm not going to engage with them when I'm at my lowest, because they're just going to rock bottom me. If I want to deal with this vampire, I'm going to deal with it when I've got a full charge myself. And then I'll know that they're going to do this to me because I know them well. Then I'm going to give myself half an hour after to recharge, and I'll quickly recharge after that. So that's energy management, right? So one thing is you got to just own your energy. You can't let others control your energy for you. But the second part, which I think is something that a lot of leaders like, is we sometimes, I know I've said it myself, that you have a certain amount of energy per day and then you got to sleep and recover. But actually, we can do a lot of things in the moment to recover and our energy. We can't like recharge the whole battery, but we can quickly boost charge it. And that's kind of the transition times between one event to another. And you can apply it to, let's say you had a really hectic day at work. Like, what's your transition between work and home, right? And we know that during COVID, this all fell apart real quick because you went from the dining table to your kids' kind of playroom within about 30 seconds. There was no driving, there was nothing. So I say that you got to be able to control your transition timings. So your energy is not just something you can go, well, I've got my battery and just deplete. You can actually boost charge it during the day if you can manage your day based on the energy. So that's something you can do. And it can be as simple as, I'm just going to get away from here and just go for a 5-minute walk. I know we talked about sleep before. We underestimate the value of power naps.
Oh, I love my
Right.
nap.
Yeah. I mean, this is like in other cultures, right? Outside of kind of the Western capitalist kind of culture that we've created, this used to be a normal thing, like sleeping during the day. I mean, Japanese do it. We know the siesta in the Mexican countries, even the Middle East. Some of that's due to the heat, but it's not uncommon to just kind of snooze, and it's not a bad thing. And if you travel around, you can see in different countries, even in parts of Europe, you can see people kind of having a little nana nap on the bench in the park. So it's. But I think for us, we're not exactly high productivity, so it's weird. But I think we underestimate nana naps or power naps, and despite there being so much research on this saying how good they are for you. And when I say power nap, I mean sort of 10 to 20 minutes, right? I don't mean a couple of hours. That you're going into a REM sleep probably by then. So it's 10 to 20 minutes. And power naps is actually a learned thing. I didn't really learn it until I joined the military. But I remember, like a quick story, like I remember my first, we were going from Devonport to Whangaparoa, which is the boot camp, the military camp. And we knew it was going to be hell week. Or the instructors knew, we didn't know because we were all naive. And we thought, oh, great. And we just got drilled for a week. We got on the bus. And you got to remember, like, we were 17, 18, most of us, right? So we got on the bus. It was like a sports kind of, trip. We started yapping and chatting, to each other. It's like, yeah, exciting. And I remember my instructor at the time, this guy's like 6'7", built like a tank. And he just walks in and going, shut up. It's like, go to sleep. And we're like, what? It's like, go to sleep, you're going to need it. And he just walked out. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. But that was kind of, I remember the experience because we really learned how to do that. And, let me ask you a question. Can I ask you a question?
Yeah, sure.
What's the longest time you have gone without having a proper sleep, like a bed, in the bed?
What's the longest time I've gone
Without sleep.
without sleep?
Yeah. And when I say without sleep, I mean in a bed, like a proper sleep.
In a bed?
Yeah.
Not too long, because I'll always go back.
Yeah.
I'll feel uncomfortable, and I'll be like,
Because we don't, right? Like it's normally like, and those that have, and sometimes shift workers go through this, 24 hours, 48 hours, you will know. You will not be able to operate, literally. You will not be able to tell colors. You'll not be able to make decisions.
Right.
Make simple things like on and off, so cognitively sleep is massive, right? So the longest I've been is 3.5 days, right? And I was stuffed after that. I remember, and I was like power napping to the nth degree. So this was in the military. We were doing defense watches at the time, which is basically when you're in kind of battle station, so to say. And not for real, it was just an exercise. But I remember that on that third day, I was in the chippy part of ship. So I was part of the chippies group. And he said, go to the chippy shop and grab some screws because we had to fix this thing. And I went in and I just kind of tried to grab this kind of box of screws, and it just dropped on the floor. And it was just a bunch of whole lot of random screws. And I was just there, and I was like trying to find the right screws, which is not hard. In a normal situation, it would take me like 30 seconds, just find the right size screws. I was there for like 15 minutes trying to find these screws from this pile of screws on the deck, the right size ones. And I remember that experience because it just kind of showed me. And the military does make you push your body and mind, right? So I kind of had these experiences. But the reason I sort of share that story is that we underestimate how much impact sleep has on us. So, just going back to the question, and what can we do if you're busy? Like, do what recharges you. I know there was a huge tangent we went down with sleep and power napping, but I think if that's your thing, then do that. And the best tip I give leaders now is go to your car. I do this. I'll go to my car and I'm sure someone's seen it. No one's told me anything. They're probably like, well, what are you doing? I would just go to the garage or, where the car's parked, and I would just shut my windows and I'd just go to sleep for 15 minutes, and I just set my timer.
Cool. I love that. I feel good because I'm not the only one who does it. I also go to my car.
You're ahead of your time.
I look at my team. Like, okay, I'll sneak out. Come back out. Hey, everyone all good? Everyone all good? But saying that, like, what are your thoughts or what can you share with our people who might feel guilty doing that? Because, a lot of leaders are trapped in the mindset of, I've always got to be busy. I can't be caught slipping. People will think I'm not a leader.
Yeah.
But I know I need that power nap, but I just feel guilty. Like, what's your advice for people who might feel that way?
I think the simpler advice is to know your value. And I'm going to dig in a little bit here. The longer advice, which would be wrong to give right now, is you've probably got some narrative going on in your head right now, some story, some identity issues that for you to feel valuable as a leader, self-esteem, self-worth, self-value, you've attached the self-value to martyring yourself, basically, which is not great. But that's more of that'd be a coaching conversation. But what I mean by know your value is that, and we do this with corporate and organizational development, is as a leader, you add unique value to your team. You can't just be the person that does what your team does, but better, smarter, and faster. Right? That's often where leaders get stuck, right? And so if you kind of just get away from that and go, what is your value that you're bringing as a leader? And what's the best way you can add that value? And that's kind of the switch to go from a doer to a people leader. So as a doer, your value, self-worth, and the measure of your value is on how much you know, how quickly you can deliver, the quality of your delivery, and all of those technical skills. Your value as a leader is how good are you at getting the best out of people. And I had to make this transition myself, going from an engineer. And I was that was my philosophy. I was to outknow, outwork, and outsmart people. And I was the best in the team. So I was a great leader until I no longer was leading engineers. And then I said, what do I do now? And so if you can just kind of change that value, what is your value as a leader? If your value as a leader is to look after people, then you need to be at your best, kind of using the aircraft analogy, put your oxygen mask on before your child or others. It's the same thing. If you're dead on the floor, you're no good to anyone, right? So I think that's the mindset leaders need to have, is that I'm not here to kind of somehow show. Leading by example is not saying, I'm going to be in the trenches with you and do stuff with you, I'll be here to the end. Leading by example is, I know the value I'm adding and I'll be there when you need me, but I trust you enough and I respect you enough that I'm not going to get in the trench with you. I know how to get in the trench, you and I know that, but I'm not going to do that. So that mindset shift is often quite crucial, particularly for new leaders. They don't have that. I didn't have that. Most leaders don't. But if you can shift that, then I think that second part comes a lot easier. The guilt goes away because you're no longer there to do the mahi with the team. You're there to look after the team, which means, and if I can extrapolate that actually to a CEO, for example, or an executive leader, I say the same thing to them. One of my favorite sort of things for activities is I force them to go away and spend an hour a day out of the office. I don't know how you feel about it, but most CEOs, they struggle with this.
Well, an hour?
Yeah.
I could be,
don't
work.
And my team's going to see it. I was like, yeah, let them see it. Let them see it. Walk loud and proud out of the office. I'm going for an hour. I'm going to go think about the business. I'm going to do some strategy stuff. I'm going to look up. And then one leader struggled with this so much. I remember he just wouldn't do it. And his EA, the person at the front desk, she was the one that made him do it. And she would email me, say, yeah, he's gone out, he's back. I was just like, choice, well done. So I think that that's the mindset. And so the reason I shared that side is because it's not just new leaders, actually. CEOs and senior leaders struggle with it as well, because they're still stuck in that mindset, but just at a more higher level. And I say the same thing to them. It's like, okay, well, you haven't made any time to think strategic, which is their time. Then if you're not doing that, who is? So I think that mindset shift then helps leaders feel less guilty, because you're feeling guilty because you feel like you're not doing something, right? Whereas what you need to switch to is, I'm doing what I need to do right now, which is sometimes it's just making sure that I'm ready to go because the team will need me now or later and I can't burn out. Yeah.
I love that. For me and my family, I think about our family, one of the things we like to do, because what you just shared there with the CEO, stepping back from the day-to-day can be really hard. So you can kind of like take a breather, think about the bigger picture, right? This is why we're doing it. This is the mission, whatever it is, the inspiration, and then get back into the day-to-day, right?
Yeah.
Me and my family like to do prayers. We like to study the scriptures because, we come back at the end of the day. My kids just come back from school. We come back from work. We've all come back from different places. And then we're like, doing things. And it's just nice to like just study the scriptures. Be like, this is why we're here. This is our purpose in life. This is what we're meant to be doing. This is why we give things 100%. This is why families are important. This is what matters most in life. Like, for me, it's like that, where it's just like an ability to kind of step back.
Yeah.
But I see, and I've even caught myself many times where you get so caught in the day-to-day, and then I end up bringing work home, and I'm still thinking about work. I'm still talking about work, and my wife's like, I don't want to hear about work.
Yeah.
I just want to talk about kids, what we're going to do for the holiday. I'm like, okay, I think I need to figure out a transition here. But I love that. And it's about being strategic with your time and your energy.
Yeah.
And what would you say, though, to people like myself or men or women out there who have families that go back to their families at the end of the day? They've given so much to the business, so much to the team, so much to their clients. And at the end of the day, they feel kind of depleted. And maybe they feel guilty about that when they go home. Like, I just don't have any more energy in the tank. I'm just like,
Yeah.
you're not listening to me. Or, Dad, Mum, can you play with me? I'm like, like, what's your advice around that? Like, how do you manage your energy so your family don't kind of get the leftovers?
Yeah, and to be honest, I can relate to that as well. I'm no different myself. Like, I have to work really hard to kind of go kid time. I don't mean kid time. I mean being present, mentally, emotionally present. Because, you can sit there and the kids are talking to you like you're thinking about something else. Like, that's not what we want. I want to put one very bluntly, and then I'll kind of be kind and do the other part as well. The blunt answer here is, get your priorities right. So that's the blunt answer. No, it's not easier. It's easier said than done, because we know that, and particularly if you're the provider, right? Let's say you run the business because you bring the bread home. You know that you're working hard for the kids. So the purpose is kind of mixed, particularly for primary income earners, men, women, because you go to work like I do that. Right? I work my butt off and I bust ass in my business because I know that I'm building that future and I'm bringing this financial security in for the kids. So I think the purpose can get quite mixed up sometimes. It's not like I'm just going to go work in a factory and then come home, right? For a lot of people, they take pride in their work these days. Like I've not met many leaders who have that factory mindset anymore, right? Because world's moved on. So people love what they do. So that purpose can get quite mixed up sometimes. So the blunt answer is, get your priorities right, get your shit sorted. The second answer is also be kind on yourself, because what we often, and I say this to leaders as much as kind of men and women for the families, that you don't have to get it perfect every day. Some days you're just going to be gone for 2 weeks, right? Just have a busy, when I say gone, I mean physically gone, but your presence might not be there, but you can make up for it. And sometimes I see leaders get too hung up in needing this perfect routine of, gym, breakfast, or, breakfast, gym, work, finish on time, and then do that. I was like, I don't think I've met anyone who has that perfect life. It just doesn't happen like that. So kind of just chill out and be kind to yourself as well, going, I'm not losing sight of what I need to do, but at the same time, I'm having perspective of what my priorities are. And here's one actually, because I do this video every Christmas. You might see this one coming up on the 25th, but I've done it. It's just this short video that I've done 3 years in a row now. And all I do is I just pull my phone out, and I'm on LinkedIn mainly. I just kind of share it on LinkedIn. And I just say to people, hey, I won't say in those words, but essentially saying that, it's been a tough fight, and next year's going to be a tough fight. Just remember what you're fighting for. And to me, like that video sharing, I mean, hopefully someone gets value from it, of course, but that's like my own accountability almost. I do that for myself more than anyone else. Most of the content I put out is for others, but that one I think is just selfishly for me, because that's kind of how I feel about it. And I had to deal with this as I mean, this one is actually quite emotional. It's in the military. It's like you're out there, you're away from your family for 7 months at a time, sometimes longer. You kind of have to remind yourself, why am I doing this? What am I fighting for? And at some point, happens with every service man and woman out there, is at some point your family comes before king and country. It happened to me. It happens to everyone who leaves. At some point, your family will come before king and country, and the purpose there in the family front will be greater than the purpose. And I think that happens with business, that happens with corporate. At some point, everyone gets to that point where your family will matter more than your career. And we go through these phases, by the way, the career building phase, family phase, early kids, young kids, and then we go to the career building phase. So what I say to leaders is, firstly, like, don't lose sight of that. Know what you're fighting for. But at the same time, if you get it wrong, it's okay. Like, that you can recover, you can get back into it, you can create love with kids and family and your whānau. So yeah, they're both the hard and the soft punch on that one. So.
Yeah, I love that. There you go. There's the blunt and the kind advice around that, but both very useful. And look, we're pretty much at the end of our conversation, and it's been very insightful, very practical tips as well. And I should have acknowledged this at the beginning, but also thank you for your service for our country as well. And to have you here, share your story, your experience and leadership insight, like, we're much better for it. So thank you so much. And just, when you're talking about energy, this is one of the things I always share with my facilitators, my team, because we're always facilitating different leadership programs.
Yeah.
You know what it's like.
Yeah.
If you're delivering a full day workshop, you got to think about the energy of the room,
Yes.
the students, right? And I always tell my facilitators, be a DJ. Because when those DJs, they play music and people could be dancing for hours, but if you play the wrong song and, at the wrong time, people are going to boo you, right? So it's like playing the right music at the right time to keep the energy high, energy level. So look, what's some final advice you want to share with our audience today, just around managing the energy? And then also, if people want to get in touch and learn more about your services, how can they do that?
Hey, look, my final advice and I'll aim it at leaders, but professionals as well, is that you're an executive athlete, you're a professional athlete, think of it like that, and you're not on an 80-minute field, you're on a 50-year marathon of your career. So don't burn out, because you look back on it and you just go, I just played an 80-minute game, not a 50-year career. So my advice is that pace yourself. You're in a career of 50 years. You're not a game of 80 minutes or 1 year. So pace yourself. And hey, first, I also want to say that thank you for bringing this topic up. I mean, I talk about leadership a lot, and that's pretty much kind of my job. But it's pretty cool to kind of talk about this aspect of what we do, because it's often underrated, misunderstood, and unfortunately, this is also kind of sometimes considered as fluffy. And I can tell you, mate, like, I've spent time in the military. I've met and worked with like Marines and SEALs, and none of us think it's fluffy. So if you're some corporate executive thinking it's fluffy, then maybe think again. But yeah, if you want to get in touch and talk more about us and what we do, then just visit thebridgeleaders.com, and we'll be more than happy to just have a chat. A lot of what we do is very much tailored to the person, the organization, the team. So we'll never come in and say, this is what we should do. That's not our style. It's very much, what results do you want? And then let's talk about how we can support you to get you there. And then the last one, and it's actually not even a plug. This is just our purpose. So we didn't form the company to make money. I mean, of course we make money because we pay ourselves and we pay our mortgages. But we kind of started with a bit of a purpose in mind. And after serving 18 years in the military, I was a volunteer firefighter for 5 years. I was a scout leader. Like, I'm quite big on New Zealand and Aotearoa and our people. So our mission is really not just about leaders, but it's actually better leaders, better teams, and all in service of a stronger New Zealand Inc. And that's what we're here to do. And if you're aligned with that value set as a business, then you're the right fit for us. If you want to tick a box, then move on.
Amazing. Well, there you go. If you want to get in touch, you can get in touch that way. We'll also leave some details in the description as well in the podcast. But again, Kenny, founder, CEO of The Bridge, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, mate. I appreciate it.
Podcast.